Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we're going to be looking at this hunk of metal, the Spydiechef from Spyderco, with some really awesome steel. They've gotten a lot of attention out there in the knife community as being a knife that a lot of people like, and so today we're just going to make sure that everybody is right and see if it really does live up to the hype. First thing we want to do is some size comparisons. I've got a PM2 here. I've got a pair of 3, our classic comparisons here. Now, lengthwise, the Spydiechef is a little bit shorter than the PM2, but when you compare the blade length, the Spydiechef is actually quite a bit longer in that regard, oddly enough. So really good blade to body ratio on the Spydiechef, which is something I appreciate. And then weight-wise, let's take a look here. I think when you look at pictures of this knife, it looks pretty heavy, but it's really not, considering 3.75, so not quite under an ounce an inch, but really, really close to it. It's a very good weight to knife ratio and blade to body ratio, so pretty happy about that. And now we're going to jump into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and terrible of this hunk of metal. For the decent, first thing I want to mention is the titanium handle. So I haven't had this knife for super long. You will notice that there are some snail trails and stuff on this. That's going to happen given this like bead blasted kind of finish on this titanium. If that really bothers you, you might want to just stay away from this knife because it is going to mark up extremely easily from the smallest amount of scratches or scuffs or bumps or bruises. So I'm not a huge complainer of that. I think that the knife is such an amazing knife that I can very much look past a few snail trails. You know, when the clip moves around, you might get some scratches in there. I'm just going to count that, chalk it up as wear and tear, and kind of give the knife some character. Everybody's Spydiechef is going to look a little bit different. I'm fine with that. As far as the feel in the hand, it's not near as chalky as you would think. It's much more just smooth. Feels like you're touching the blade, basically. If I was closing my eyes, I couldn't tell a difference between those two. I prefer this to the feel of like a Sabenza, which is a little bit more orange peely of a feel, maybe even a little bit more rough than that. This is very enjoyable, and I like it. The clip, speaking of which, clip is a wire clip. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There we go. Wire clip. This is not completely deep carry, like you still have a little chunk of the knife coming out, but it still gets pretty deep in there, and the knife is so thin that given how easy it is to get your pants in and out, it's got just the right amount of give. I will give this an A- for the clip. If it was a little bit further up, so it was truly deep carry, I could maybe get like an A+, but still better than average by a good margin. The general pocket size of this Spydiechef is really understated. When you look at pictures of the knife, it kind of looks like a big knife, and it, like I said, it does have a bigger cutting edge than the PM2, but in your pocket, it is light years better. Number one, you don't have the giant hump that you have on the Para 3 or the PM2, and so just narrow-wise, it is very slim in the pocket, kind of a flat part of the knife here, and then the angle that it sits in, like if this had a flipper tab, it wouldn't even be that much of a problem because it angles off so much that way. And so the end result is this carries fantastically. I would say the only knife I've had that beats it is the TRM Neutron, and this is maybe a tiny bit thicker than that knife because it's like extremely thin, but this knife is just behind it in terms of carryability. I am very happy with how it actually carries in the pocket. The lanyard hole is there, it exists, but again, it's one of those lanyard holes that I am not bothered by. It's not messing with the shape or size of the knife, and the way that the blade kind of curves up, we're not losing any of that blade length because of the lanyard hole. It's going underneath the blade, and so we're not sacrificing length like we are on like a a pair of 3 rather. So I like that. And then just the fit and finish of this knife is awesome. There's tons of chamfers. It's very good in the hand. The ergos are excellent. I do think this fits in the hand a little bit better than the TRM, just a fraction thicker, and that contributes the height of the knife. And next thing we'll do is get into the excellent. So I think one of 2 excellent things that I really, really appreciate is the steel, LC200N. There's a couple of knives that Spyderco makes that has a steel. This is really the most popular one. And boy, howdy, is this steel awesome. So as far as like sharpness out of the box, it's laser sharp. Stropped it a bit. And I mean, we're talking like no problem at all. And then this is basically corrosion resistant. I talked about this steel in my last video about my favorite knife steels. This is one of my top 3 favorite knife steels, and using this knife as part of what gave me that confidence to proclaim such a thing. Just comparing this to H1 you don't want to use unless you absolutely need it for the corrosion resistance aspect of it. You're a pirate, you're a lifeguard, something along those lines, then you need it. But this knife is giving you like a 5 out of 10 on all the other areas of like, you know, toughness and edge retention and sharpenability. It's a solid knife. You know, I think it outperforms edge retention compared to like S35 VN or S30V. It's better than those, and those are still considered like super steels. But at the same time, having like a 9.5 out of 10 on corrosion resistance. So really for a pocket knife, for EDC knife, I think right now this is probably one of, if not the best steel. That I'm just really convinced that more knives should have this steel. It's the steel that NASA uses for their ball bearings. Like this is no joke, guys. This is really, really, really good steel. So that is one of 2 excellent parts of the knife. Next thing is the blade shape and the grind. So Spydiechef, this is in the name, kind of got a chef knife kind of angle to it. What ends up happening, the way that the blade and the handle is shaped, is you can cut down and your knuckles do not get in the way. And it's just this incredibly comfortable, intuitive blade shape to where even though it technically doesn't have any flats, it's such a big, long belly that it's almost like all of it's flat depending on what angle, because you'll be able to use it in whatever capacity you need. Even to the point where the tip is actually not that bad. It is a pokey tip. Like comparing this to some of my other knives, like maybe the G&G Hawk Orbit, which is like a cleaver shape that has like literally no useful tip whatsoever. This is actually pretty like pokey. The belly isn't super long this way. Like it actually helps make that tip pretty pokey. I'd say comparing this to like the Benchmade 940, I think this is actually a better penetrator than the Benchmade 940. Honestly, like just testing both these knives, this is a better stabbing knife. So considering what the blade is made out of and the shape of it, I think those are the 2 most important aspects of a knife, is what is the steel and what is the geometry of the steel. And for this knife, both of those things are the 2 excellent parts of the knife, which is like another like secret third excellent part about it. Now, this isn't without some nitpicks. So first off, when I got this knife out of the box, the centering was not on. It wasn't too far off. It was actually favoring the clip side initially. And so took it apart, cleaned it out, lubed it up, and, you know, in kind of dialing in the actions so that there's no blade play and that it can, you know, easily and quickly deploy one-handed without moving my wrist, which is exactly where I wanted the knife. I was able to dial it in, so it's not like it was impossible for me to get it centered. You will notice that after dialing it in, the centering on this has actually shifted to slightly favor the presentation side. And really, I don't know. I don't really care too much about that. I could fiddle with it some more to get it right in the middle, but I was more concerned about the action than anything, and I got it where I wanted to do, where I wanted it to be. Now, I'm putting it in the nitpick because it just took me a little while to like take the knife apart and fiddle with it and get it tuned up. This could be like asterisks for some people and turning it into a terrible if you're one of those people that just will not or does not open up your knives and get into the knives. All of my Spydercos that I have bought, as much as I love them, I have more knives for Spyderco than anybody else. They need to be fiddled with. Loctite in this is like a must, because when I'm like very precisely tuning the action on this blade, if I don't have Loctite, that tuning is going to go away. A couple jostles, a couple openings in the knife, and it's either going to get looser usually, or move around and maybe even get too tight. So if you are that person that does not want to get into the knife, you might not get the action you want. You might not get the centering you want. If you are willing to get into your knife, you could probably fix those things, no problem, and get it tuned up. So still, it'd be awesome if it just came out of the box ready to go and you didn't have to mess with it. The lanyard hole rattles is the other thing. I think people, you can hear that. I think people have gotten ones that were much worse. I think the fit and finish on mine is better than the average one, to where it's only if you're shaking it really hard, and it's a very, very quiet thing. It's not like me walking around with this in my pocket, I can hear it. Not at all. And if you do have one like that, just, again, if you're willing to, take your knife apart and take the lanyard tube out, and you'll be fine. The next thing I want to talk about is just the fact that this is a right-handed knife only. Having this lock bar, just by virtue of the shape of the knife, we can't put the cutout to get to it from that side, obviously. So right-handed, no problem. One thing I will say, if you are left-handed, it does give you the cutout here to do the Spidey flick. And I think I pulled it off like a couple times lefty. No. It's a lot harder to do it horizontally. Well, you get the idea. If you're left-handed, you might be able to do a spider flick. The other negative is that if you're right-handed, you can't do the spider flick. That's like, obviously, can't do that. It's blocked. And I kind of miss that. It opens up really well, especially after I got it like adjusted. But the fun of the PM2 is just being able to do the Spidey flick, which not a big deal. It's just another way to open up the knife. Considering how this knife knocked it out of the park in pretty much every other area, I don't care that much. And the last nitpick is simply the Lockstick. So I'm kind of two minds here. I definitely am not like a huge fan of Lockstick, obviously. But there's a consideration for this knife in particular. The whole point of the steel is to be like ultra corrosion resistant, to like, chop up a bunch of protein and vegetables and stuff and kind of clean it off half-assed and not really worry too much about it, of having to like immaculately clean it off or oil it up or anything, right? And so when they first released the knife, the detent ball was a steel detent ball, which kind of threw a monkey wrench in the whole idea, because if you left this in water, sure, the blade wouldn't rust, but the detent ball would. So eventually they figured that out, and now that was a dumb thing. And so now it's got a ceramic detent ball, which is fine. That's good. That's excellent, even. So there's less here that can rust. Now, traditionally what you would do to remove bad lockstick is to have a steel insert, because the steel is very smooth and won't wear out. And if you put a steel insert, you're gonna have the same problem as having a steel detent ball. So that's why the Spydiechef, I would assume, doesn't have a steel insert. So does it have Lockstick? Yes, it does. Does it bother me enough? No. It's the biggest consideration for this knife is the Lockstick. I'll take it because what I'm getting in return is like a rust impervious knife, nearly. And I like that aspect of it. I want my knife to do something really well. And in this case, it's kind of just use it and forget it in liquid or, you know, acidy type situations. Next is the terrible. The terrible really is only if you need to adjust the knife and you don't feel willing to get in there. That's it. For some people, you're gonna be like, whatever, I can do that. And you probably already have a Spydiechef or you're trying to get one. If you're somebody that has an issue with getting into your knife, you probably don't want to risk it, I'm gonna say. If you're like really hard and fast on that rule, maybe you could send it to a sharpener and just ask the sharpener if they want to get in there and adjust it for you. Usually people that sharpen knives are willing to open up knives and do that kind of thing for you. So you might want to talk to somebody about that. That might get you around that issue if the knife you end up having has the issue, which it might not. Mine did. And that's it. That's my review on the Spydiechef. Is it as good as everybody says? Yes, it is. It's actually very, very good. I will say value-wise, this is $200. $215, I guess, if you're getting it brand new, but in that ballpark range. Comparing this to like a Sleesh buoy, which is out of production, and the price is going up and up and up. Honestly, I think I like this knife better. I haven't gotten a chance to use the Sleesh buoy, but I think I prefer this steel. Like LC200N is beating XHP in edge retention tests, which is nuts considering that this steel is like better in all the other ways anyway. So if it's beaten in that category, then you're spending a lot of money for a strictly inferior steel in most cases. Personally, I like the shape and size of the blade and how thin the grind is and how thin the knife is. I would take this over the Sleesh buoy, even if they cost the same amount. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the Spydiechef. I think it does deserve all the hype it's getting. That's it for today, guys. I'll catch you out in my next video. Still waiting for that knife from Russia. It's been like 2 weeks. Hopefully a week or less, and we'll finally get that grail of all grails in. Have a good one. Adios.